The primary products I would say that our customers use in a geospatial workflow are primarily Civil 3D, which is primarily used by surveyors and civil engineers. Every project will benefit from leveraging, geospatial, data into their building information modeling workflows. But there's no question that the benefits, far outweigh the investments required. This is bigger than just, leveraging geospatial data and BIM together. This is really about transforming the way our customers plan, design, build, and operate the project. So that's the digital transformation that BIM and GIS enables. This is a huge transformation in the way capital project owners think about ultimately the way they deliver these large-scale, highly complex, highly expensive, critical assets in the built environment.
Hello and welcome to WGIC, the World Geospatial Industry Council. Our guest today is Theo Agelopoulos, Vice President, AEC Design and Engineering Strategy, Autodesk. Theo, thank you so much for finding this time.
Well, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My first question to you, Theo. Autodesk is a very trusted name in AEC and geospatial sectors. For the benefit of the WGIC members and the larger industry, can you tell us about the top 3 products of Autodesk for the geospatial sector and what's latest with these products?
Yes, of course. So I would say, firstly, from an Autodesk perspective, we have multiple products that really work with geospatial data. The primary products I would say that our customers use in a geospatial workflow are primarily Civil 3D, which is primarily used by surveyors and civil engineers. AutoCAD Map 3D for many of our customers that are working within an AutoCAD environment and leveraging geospatial data. And probably I say the third is Recap Pro, which is the primary tool many of our customers are using for reality capture data, ingesting, normalizing, and then extracting information from reality capture data.
Okay. What's latest with any of these products? Would you like to share that?
Yeah, I think, probably the main thing that has been going on with all of our products is one is connecting all of our offerings to our cloud BIM and CAD platform called Autodesk Construction Cloud. The other major thing I would say is primarily interoperability between all of our geospatial products, but all of our products generally in the Autodesk portfolio, including interoperability with a lot of our partner products, obviously partners like Esri, but even a lot of competitive offerings from other vendors in the marketplace. So we've really been focused on trying to reduce the friction of how our customers use not just geospatial data, but I would say all data in connected workflows.
That's great. Certainly, these products, I'm sure they're used in the infrastructure segment, and the demand for infrastructure is only growing, and so is the need for optimizing the resources and developing sustainable infrastructure. How is Autodesk serving this opportunity through its solutions and products?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think from our perspective, we've been thinking about delivering sustainable capital assets, I would say, for 2 decades. So this isn't really a new thing for us. We've always talked about our ability to deliver, whether it's sustainable buildings, sustainable roads, or sustainable, water infrastructure. That's always been top of mind. So from our perspective, what we've really been focused on has been trying to move a lot of the industry from traditionally very 2D centric workflows to more 3D and building information modeling based workflows, because that allows many of our customers to make better decisions earlier in the project delivery lifecycle. So making those decisions in a very early planning phase ultimately results in a big benefit from a carbon reduction phase, further downstream, when obviously a capital asset is in operations and maintenance. And when you think of the total operating cost a capital asset, more than 85-90% of the cost generally is in operations and maintenance. But the decisions about what materials and and what decisions you make to reduce carbon happen very, very early on. So we've been very focused on trying to allow our customers, one, to make those decisions earlier, using analysis, simulation, and now obviously with the onset of AI, that provides kind of the next phase of optimization and efficiency in how a lot of those decisions are actually made. So I'd say that's really what we've been trying to do, is help our customers and the industry make a lot of those decisions early in order to enable a more sustainable outcome, but also to allow our customers to deliver more resilient assets, especially in these times as we see climate change and other natural disasters causing problems in the world that we live in.
My next question to you, Theo, is about the convergence on BIM and geospatial, and something that is happening for a while, and the industry is witnessing it for a while now. I want to ask a few questions on this subject. How are Autodesk technology partnerships, for instance, Esri, you mentioned about it, enabling it to mature this convergence?
Yeah, I think when I think back and I reflect on the last 6+ years that we've really been leaning in and working closely with Esri, I think what drove that initial desire was the fact that we saw a lot of different stakeholders in the project life cycle, using both geospatial data, and I would say engineering data primarily. And what was interesting about it is many of these individuals weren't experts in geospatial, or they may not be expert engineers, but they needed to work across the different types of data. So when you think about the capital asset lifecycle from a planning phase, design phase, construction and operations phase, there was these, and we used to show this, we still show these concentric circles. And there's a place where a lot of this data has to come together for these different stakeholders in order to work better together, make better decisions, etc. So when we looked at that, and we really realized that as technology suppliers in the space, it was our obligation to provide a better user experience between these different stakeholders. So you don't have to be a PhD in geodesy in order to use geospatial data, right? It was more around how do you allow people to focus on the job to be done, but yet leverage the power of both BIM, CAD and geospatial data. So that was really what started our engagement with Esri. And what we realized is that this convergence between CAD and BIM provided a ton of value from a collaboration, efficiency, reduced errors. These were some of the primary benefits that we realized that a lot of our customers in the industry, could really benefit from. And just in general, reducing that friction in workflows we saw this as one of the biggest areas of opportunity. So that was really what drove a lot of our engagement with Esri. And I think when we started really talking about this convergence between BIM and GIS, it was almost like the industry kind of woke up and said, oh my gosh, this is something we should have solved many, many years ago. Sure. So I think, as two of the largest technology providers in the space, it really presented a new challenge and an opportunity for us to work on. That's what we've been working on, I would say, for the last 6 or 7 years.
Okay, fantastic. That's a challenge and certainly an opportunity for the industry to bet on. What are some of the sectors? Certainly, I can understand the infrastructure segment would be hugely benefiting from this. What are the other sectors that are benefiting from this convergence, and how?
Yeah, I would argue that, and when I think about infrastructure, I don't think about the word as meaning just roads and highways, and water, wastewater, treatment plants. I mean, I think about the world being one big infrastructure, and whether it's horizontal, or linear infrastructure or vertical infrastructure, when you assemble all of these different components together, that's what makes up the built environment, right? So a building, in my mind, is just a piece of vertical infrastructure that's part of a more complex ecosystem of assets. So I would argue that anything that gets delivered in the built environment is a piece of infrastructure and will benefit from this convergence. So if you think back about this concept of a smart city, a smart city is really just a better way of planning, designing, building, and ultimately operating this connected ecosystem of components of infrastructure. And so I'm going to be brazen and say that everything will benefit in the built environment from this. And ultimately, the built environment, serves a purpose, and the purpose really is to serve its constituents, okay, and to make the world we live in a better place, to make it a more sustainable world, to make it a cleaner world, etc. So again, I think that's the level of benefits and importance that certainly, I think we see at Autodesk of the convergence of certainly of BIM and GIS, but just generally the benefits of geospatial, and BIM and GIS in the world we live in.
Okay, you've mentioned briefly about the benefits of BIM and GIS convergence. Would you want to, through an example or through a recent implementation, help us understand what are the kind of operational and financial benefits users are able to achieve?
I think there's numerous examples. I would, first of all, I would say that every project will benefit from leveraging geospatial data into their building information building information modeling workflows. I sent you a couple of examples that maybe you can include as well as part of this piece. But one of the ones that pops to mind is the Ho Chi Minh City, which is the metro line, and generally that's a great example where the primary benefit, and it's always difficult to quantify the exact money value, right? But what we definitely see from our customers is improvement in collaboration, which generally reduces the amount of errors. And if you think about large infrastructure projects, unfortunately, more infrastructure projects run over budget and over time than any other type of project. And the reason that is because of the complexity of the asset we're building, and many of the unknowns, things like what's beneath the ground. The minute you start digging, we start finding unfortunately things that weren't predictable. So that generally results in many change orders and increased cost. But also, I think what we see some of the benefits are that, as I mentioned earlier, when you think about the total operating cost, leveraging, and building or designing something, in the built environment, thinking about the outcomes that you're working towards, as I said, more sustainable outcomes, reduce carbon, using those BIM and the BIM and GIS data upfront and doing a lot of that analysis and simulation, ultimately results in reduced carbon, right? So when I think about the outcomes as being the benefits, it's reduced carbon, it's reduced errors. I think the example that I sent to you talked a lot about from an advantage perspective. It talked a lot about Ho Chi Minh City making better decisions earlier. It talked about automation of deliverables. It talked about collaboration and reduced errors as well. So I think one of the challenges I think we generally have, it's very difficult to put like an actual quantitative value that says if you do BIM and GIS, it's 20% better or 15% better or faster or cheaper. But I think there's no doubt. And generally, the way we quantify the benefits is we survey a lot of our customers that are both using BIM and GIS in a coordinated way in a project. And I'd say, today it's very qualitative, the benefits, but there's no question that the benefits, far outweigh the investments required to transform our customers' workflows. But in general, what we see is many of our customers that implement a true digital delivery process, moving from 2D to 3D, incorporating geospatial as a key part of how they plan, design, ultimately build and operate that physical asset. Just at the project level of delivery, we see, reduced cost, we see higher quality, we see, in some cases, anywhere between, 10 to 20%, reduction in time as well. So again, without being able to completely quantify, the benefits, I think that's generally the range of what we see. But again, this is a bigger than just, leveraging geospatial data and BIM together. This is really about transforming the way our customers plan, design, build, and operate the project. So that's the digital transformation that BIM and GIS enables to happen. So I just want to also, make sure that, I present it, the right way. This is a huge transformation in the way capital project owners think about ultimately the way they deliver these large scale, highly complex, highly expensive, critical assets in the built environment.
Thank you so much, Theo, for enumerating the benefits of the convergence of BIM and GIS. I also want to understand what can we expect in this space moving around when there is too much talk about or the increasing uptake of digital twins, smart cities, all of these are coming up.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a really exciting time. Because I think a lot of the emerging technologies are just going to make our ability to implement, BIM and leverage GIS, yeah, even better, right? So the way we think about building information modeling is that building information modeling is a digital delivery process, right? It's the way and how our customers deliver capital, projects, into the built environment. We certainly, as a technology provider, we don't do BIM. Our customers do BIM. We build technology that enables them to do BIM. Okay, so the technology we build is an enabler. So what's exciting, I think, is we've seen this maturity of building information modeling moving from BIM to more. And when the cloud came along, we started to see more of a connected BIM experience. Okay, and now as we are moving and transitioning to more, there's more and more data being available due to the lower cost of acquiring, information, things like reality capture, satellite imagery, the list goes on, geotechnical data. So now we're moving into this next phase where there's so much data that what AI and machine learning is going to allow us to do is transform the way we use that data to drive more of an outcome-based BIM approach. So I think we're on the cusp of really driving massive increases in efficiency through that traditional, BIM process. But as we are able to acquire more and more data, the decisions we make earlier will have a bigger impact on the project outcome. So, to me, that's what's happening with a lot of the technology is just going to transform the way the way BIM happens. It's going to reduce low value tasks through that digital process. It will allow us to make much more informed decisions because we're going to be able to run many different types of analysis and simulations concurrently to optimize for a lot of these decisions. And then finally, what I would say is when I think about a digital delivery process, a digital twin should just be the derivative of that process. Like anytime we have a digital process in place, you should end up with a digital twin. It shouldn't be this adjacent add-on thing. So if you do BIM and you transition, your project through a plan project into a design intent part of the project through a construction part of the project, and then you ultimately end up in an as maintained part of the project, there is a different maturity of digital twin that evolves through those different phases, right? So to me, if you think about 30, 40, 50 years from now, the evolution of BIM is going to result in just essentially every city, being a smart city because you're going to deliver, a digital twin that will then get used in the operations and maintenance phase of that capital asset. And then as you continue to operate that asset within this digital twin world, all the data that gets collected will then get reused at some point in the future when you're actually doing renovation and retrofit. So I think the next phase of evolution is going to be closing the loop between operations back into renovation and retrofit, and then that cycle begins again. So I think the next 20 years is going to be exciting. I think what we certainly are focused on, and I think what of the technology suppliers in the space are all focused on, quite frankly, is how do we enable that to happen? And in order to enable that to happen, we need to transition into these rich data platforms, which we are doing today, certainly at Autodesk. We need to leverage AI, on top of those data platforms. So we're certainly investing, in AI to do all the things I just said. And then we're also investing in allowing this derivative of a digital twin, to evolve, as well. And we're also doing that today. We have certainly investments in products like Tandem. And then the next phase, as I said, will be that, that circularity of data. So that's the future, the vision of what we're all striving towards, I believe, that will ultimately be the next big transformation for our industry.
Great. Thank you for laying out that vision. I really like the idea of the circularity of the data. Thank you so much. My last question to you, Theo, is about your association, Autodesk association with WGIC. It's great to have you as a patron member since the inception of WGIC. I just want to understand how has been the experience so far, and what do you envisage for WGIC moving forward?
And I think the reason we became a patron member early on was because what we realized is, if you think about this vision of circularity of data that I just described, the reality is Autodesk, isn't going to solve that on its own, right? Autodesk, isn't the only supplier of technology in the space. There's many different suppliers of technology and many different creators of data. So what we realize is, if we really care and really want to, say that we want to create a more connected experience, it means that we certainly have to work more closely with our peer companies, both technology companies and industry partners, to make that vision a reality. And we really want to lean in being open, in the world, in the ecosystem certainly that we operate, and that means working with a lot of our competitors. It means opening up, interoperability agreements, and that's certainly what we've been working on, over the last, I would say, 10 or 15 years, is really creating not just support for industry interoperability standards, but also even creating interoperability experiences between our competitors, and that's really what we wanted to do. So the WGIC was really a forum for us to build those relationships and trust, to begin to have those discussions, and really that was the primary motivator for us. Was if we say we want to change the industry, if we say we want to be open, then we need a forum to do that. And really, and I want to give credit to Jack Dangerman, right? Because Jack Dangerman was the one that really brought many of us together to begin this process, and he really lent in a lot. And so as a result of that, I think now we've built up a really rich network of industry partners, both technology companies and many influencers, many of our customers, obviously, that are also part of WGIC. So that was really, for me, a way for us to, break down barriers, build trust, reduce friction, and hopefully accelerate a lot of the things that we're already working on around interoperability, etc. But it was also another community where I think we all have similar goals and objectives.
Great. Thank you so much for this conversation, Theo. It was wonderful talking to you this morning.
Well, thank you so much. And and again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the topic. And let me know if I can do anything else.
Sure.